it wasn't until about 40 minutes in that I realised A Benihana Christmas was running a little bit longer than usual. This is actually a double feature of this episode. It's the 10th episode of the 3rd season. It's directed by Ramis, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. It's a great episode. There are certainly multiple moments that I want to draw attention to. There are a couple of moments that are really depressing. The mood really got dragged down, but it's definitely a very well done episode. It starts off with Dwight bringing in a dead bird that he ran over. Let's start things as we mean to go on. And Jim walked up to him, and it was just like old times. I know Jim has been back for a few episodes, but it kind of took me a second to realise that this was not something we'd had over the previous episodes in this season, so that was a little bit special. Michael has tickets to Jamaica that he's going to surprise Carell with, and then Carell comes over early and she breaks up with him. And honestly, I don't blame her. The last straw for Carell was that Michael had photoshopped himself onto Carell's family picture with her children and her children's father when they were on a ski trip a few years ago. And Michael found that and photoshopped himself into it, which is a step too far. And she breaks up with him, and Michael's moping around, and he looks rather helpless in his robe. Everybody got Dunder Mifflin bathrobes, and I have to say they look really, really comfortable. And he's wearing it over his suit, and he's not very happy. We'll come back to him in a little bit. Pam got a gift for Jim, and she's actually been sending Dwight letters from the CIA. And Jim's Christmas gift is that he gets to decide what Dwight's top secret mission is. And it seemed like for a moment he was going to play along. And then he told her he didn't think he should be doing it now. And he clarified because of his promotion. Which on the one hand, yes, actually I can kind of see that as being a valid excuse. But at the same time, I think it's just that. It's an excuse. He just doesn't want to get involved with Pam in that way because it would be letting his guard down. And if he lets his guard down, he'll have to admit he's still in love with her. And he's not willing to do that. At least yet. I'm really, really hoping he does at some point soon. It has to be this season. The rest of the episode focuses partly on Michael, and we'll talk about Michael in a moment, and also partly on the party. We have this planning committee, and Angela was really nasty. I'm starting to like Karen. I feel like I started to like Karen maybe in the previous episode because I have no reason to dislike her. And when Angela told her that she should leave the planning committee, it was horrible. Really did not like that. Angela can surprise me with just how nasty she can actually be, which is saying something because she's generally pretty nasty. And Karen does leave. Meanwhile, Michael is listening to Goodbye My Lover. Dwight goes into his office. He's helping him / forcing him to get rid of everything that reminds him of Carell. And he's listening to Goodbye My Lover. And the mood just dragged down. I genuinely felt miserable. Thankfully, that's as low as the mood gets. I feel like the rest of the episode slowly began to pick itself back up. But that was heavy going. Pam then does something. Pam does a few things in this episode, actually, that I think are really great. And she acknowledges to herself, or to the camera, that she's been a bit cold with Karen. And she has no reason to. And I feel like that's the same reason, or lack of reason, why I struggled to like Karen for a good few episodes. There was nothing wrong with her. She did nothing wrong, but she clearly had eyes for Jim. And obviously this has escalated over the last few episodes. And Pam had to acknowledge that actually there was no valid reason to not be kind to her. So she goes up to her and they start to talk about, well, how mean Angela is. And they decide to form their own planning committee, which I thought was rather sweet. Jim's face as well, when Pam and Karen were talking, his face was clearly saying, what on earth is going on, which I rather enjoyed. And they have this new planning committee, they're putting up a flyer, and Dwight tries to shut the committee down, because obviously he's a fan of Angela, and Jim overrules them. And it's just so lovely to see Pam and Karen not just working together, but actually seeming like they're getting along really well. That's not only is that not something I expected, but it's also not something I thought I wanted. But seeing it, it's actually really, really lovely. And we do have a slightly awkward moment when Pam is talking with Roy. Karen comes into the room, and as Roy leaves, Karen says, "You should date him." And there is a slight pause when we think, well, I thought that Pam was about to say, actually, I was going to marry him. But then she would probably have to then open up the can of worms and say, well, actually, I called off the wedding because I got cold feet because the person you're dating told me they were in love with me. So it makes sense why she didn't elaborate on that or go into any actual detail. But having Karen and Roy meet is quite interesting. As soon as I first saw them together, well, when Karen came into the room, my first thought was, wouldn't it be great if Karen and Roy started dating? And then I realised that probably wouldn't happen. But it was just a very brief thought where I thought, maybe Pam and Jim could be together, and Karen and Roy could go off and be happy together, and everybody would be happy. Well, everybody except Michael, who seems like he's going to be miserable forever. The guys take him down to the restaurant, and I don't have too many thoughts on the restaurant scenes, not yet anyway, but I might in a little bit. The parties then start, and we have this fantastic, I absolutely loved it. The girls, Karen and Pam, now apparently I'm referring to them as the girls. I like that they're friends, it works really well. They announce that their party is starting. So Angela panics and makes an announcement about paychecks, which isn't really an announcement. And she says the party is starting. Her party is starting. And Stanley stands up. And he's just still for, I didn't time it, but a really good chunk of time. And eventually he turns to go into the girls' party. The guys then come back from the restaurant. Michael has brought a date with him, one of the waitresses. In fact, there are two waitresses who have come back for the party, and we have this brilliant scene where they're singing karaoke. Well, they're not, because Angela clearly stole the cables, but Daryl is playing music and they're singing karaoke, and then it just transitions to Angela's party, the Nutcracker party, and just it was day and night, the two party vibes, very effectively done. And then this is another thing Pam does that makes me think she's just genuinely an amazing person, because she gives Dwight wins the raffle prize. Dwight wins the raffle prize. That's a lot more difficult to say than I thought. And it's walkie-talkies. And Pam can see the look on Angela's face that Angela's just miserable that her party has not worked. So she decides to offer a peace offering, kind of, where she and Karen decide to disband their committee, and they tell Angela that they've heard great things about the brownies at her party, which Kevin was really into, and maybe they could merge the two parties. And Angela doesn't push back. She agrees to this pretty quickly, which I think was the best case scenario. But the final few scenes are pretty great. Angela is singing with Dwight holding the microphone, which I have to say is very sweet. It was very sweet. Michael phones somebody to see if they want to go to Jamaica with him. I'm 100% certain it's Jan. I can't imagine who else it would be. And Oscar briefly returns, sees the chaos and leaves. And Roy, this bit I thought was quite interesting. Roy, in one of the side rooms, gives Pam a Christmas gift. She hugs him. It's nice and friendly. And Jim sees this. And then right at the end of the episode, he tells Pam what Dwight's CIA mission will be. He's willing to play the game after all. Not necessarily because he wants to wind up Dwight, though I think that is a pretty strong factor in his motivation, but also because he didn't like seeing Roy with Pam. And I think he's starting to accept that he still loves her. I think seeing Pam talk with Karen maybe made him feel quite confused. And maybe in a way, and I don't know if this is true or if I'm just reaching here, but maybe he was dating Karen not because he's interested in her. I think they're good friends, but I think he was dating Karen to take his mind off of Pam. And by seeing Karen and Pam together, that makes that quite difficult. So Jim is very confusing. I don't really know what he's thinking. And it's going to get to the point where I wish he and Pam would just bang their heads together and admit how they're both feeling. It has to happen this season. I thought it was going to happen episode 1 because that's what I wanted to happen, and it didn't. But we're making baby steps. Jim's back at Dunder Mifflin. Karen and Pam are talking. Roy is still floating around, and I'm excited. This was a really solid episode. As I said, I didn't realise until about 40 minutes in that this was a double feature. So that's how quickly time went. And apart from the scene with Goodbye My Lover, which really was very depressing, it's generally a very, very entertaining episode, and ultimately one that I really thoroughly enjoyed.